a big philosophy of mine is contrarian view. If everybody is doing something, then that means I have to pivot 180 and do the opposite. And so I do not communicate with clients or prospects in this format.
Hi, I'm Chris Reynolds. And for my entire career, it's been my mission to help independent financial advisors build a better business through a remarkable client experience. In this podcast, you're going to hear from the visionaries, from the leaders, from the independent advisors who are reshaping the future of the financial advice industry. At the end of each episode, I'm going to leave you with at least one winnable idea that you can start implementing right away. Let's turn the page on building a better business. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Turning the Page. I'm Chris Reynolds, your host, helping advisors build a better business. Today, it is our privilege to have Thie Convery here on our show. Thie has so much to teach us. And how long have we known each other now, Thie?
It's dragging for me too, Reynolds. 15 years, maybe.
15 years. And what a career that Thie has had. It's been amazing. So let's jump right into it. Thie, why did you get into this business? What is your why? What was your big thing that says, this is the industry I want to be in, and this is why I can make a difference?
Well, it started off by default. I graduated from university with an honors degree in geology and geography. I was an exploration geologist looking for diamonds. That was my area of expertise. Any gal's best friend. I was living in the far north of Ontario, Quebec, Alberta, saw fabulous places in Canada that the average bear may not get to see.
The luxury areas of Canada.
Yeah. And I was paid to be there, and I was flying in helicopters, and we had canoes and rubber boots and twin otter planes and fishing and camping. And, if you didn't mind using an outhouse and bathing in the river, it was a very incredible experience. I made a lot of money. Because I was the camp foreman. We weren't politically correct by then. I was the foreman, and I was working a 7-day week because you're in the bush. Tuesday is the same as Sunday. So I got a bush allowance, working 2 days a week more than the average bear. I had zero expenses because the only thing you could buy was at the Hudson's Bay store. And
you were limited in your shopping venues.
And literally, if you wanted to buy a beaver pelt, you could.
You're there.
But they paid for everything, all of your food, all of your accommodations, if you're flying or between base camps or outposts, something like that. So I made a lot of money. And when I'd fly out of the bush, in my bank account would be all this cash. And so I had to hire a financial advisor to help me out. And the fella said, when you're done living and working in the bush, come and work for me, would you? So I did. I went from rubber boots and muskol to a briefcase and high heel shoes. And after 3 or 4 months in this fella's office, he said, you don't need me, get out of here, go do your own thing. So it was kind of by default, but then I fell in love with it after the fact. Yeah.
Well, it's a great business. So what would you, if someone was to ask you, what is your mission? What is your mission as an advisor? Do you have one defined, like a mission statement, or is it just something that you feel in your heart and that you've always done?
A bit of both. I feel money is a fabulous tool to achieve the things that you want in life. A pile of money is of no interest to me, right. But the things that money can do for myself, my family, my community, a little bit extended beyond the world, that really drives me. Even now I say I work to buy polio vaccines.
Right.
Yeah, using money as a tool. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And actually maybe expand upon that, because that is one of the things that it just fascinates. You spoke at our conferences several times and mentioned one of the reasons you work is for polio vaccines and how many people you can vaccinate. So maybe expand upon that, because I think that's amazing.
So I was a Rotarian, still am as an honorary, and Rotary, including a World Health Organization, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, UNICEF, U.S. Center for Disease Control, and Gavi, which is the vaccine initiative. They have made a promise to the children of the world to remove a disease from the face of the earth. And it's really simple, but it's not easy. All we have to do is give every child in the world drops of the polio vaccine. Simple. Okay. The problem is you got to get to all those kids, and there's more kids being born every minute. Okay, but once we're done, big check mark. We're done. It'll be the second disease eradicated from the face of the earth. Smallpox being first, about 100 some odd years ago, and with the events of the last couple of years, we've seen what notably a virus can do. Yeah.
Can do. As I said, I think that's just amazing that you've been able to do that, and that the foundation has done that. As I said, imagine that, eradicate something that harms human beings from the earth, and having that as a mission.
On my gravestone, I wanted to say Thie Convery, polio eradicator. And when people walk by, the intent though is when people walk by with their dog, I want them to say, "What's polio?"
See, so everyone has a definition of happiness. So they say that money can't buy happiness, but certainly money can buy comfort, but it can also buy a mission. It can buy, accomplishing things that, obviously require money, but that's not the motivator in itself. As I said, I think that's inspiring. It's inspiring for a lot of people.
If someone says money can't buy happiness, they haven't given enough of it away.
That's true. Actually, I like that. That's a great line. I'm going to use that one.
Sure.
So now let's talk about building your business. How did you go about building your business? What did you think that you were going to be doing that was different from people? I know that you have sort of a niche. Like, how would you describe your business to someone who didn't really know you?
Well, when I started, it was the old dialing for dollars, literally.
as all of us started with.
Yeah,
right?
This was over 30 years ago. Yeah, I used the Vernon directory. So it was like a reverse telephone directory. It would list people by street they lived on, so you could at least have a geographic inclination. And I I can picture this, oh dear, 30 years ago, sitting on the floor in my bedroom, dialing, because this is the way you had to do it back then, with that we didn't have these kinds of things. You were holding the receiver in one hand, dialing with the other hand, a little ruler, and I'd scratch out the names, and I would call inviting people to a financial planning seminar. And it worked. It
actually worked. Calling people works.
Oh boy. It was tough, really tough slogging. I did make a decision 30 plus years ago that I wasn't going to buy a business. I didn't want to buy somebody's practice. I just thought I wanted to attract on my own, build it on my own, let me have the choice who I was inviting into my practice. Although it was, nearly everybody because
at the time,
yeah, you had bills to pay, and you were just looking to grow. That was and so my growth of my practice was very hockey stick. It was person by person and family by family. And so it was a tough go. But if someone was starting off now, if they knew without not buying a book, I'll tell you why I don't think that's a smart idea, but that it was going to be this hockey stick, that you could make very, very good money living the life you want, helping people, is just going to be lean in the early years. If you knew that walking in, it might help you get through. The reason I don't think to buy a practice is a cost decision. Meaning, if you were going to buy a practice and you can negotiate a price, let's say it's $500,000 just for kicks, right, and assuming you had the cash to do it and you didn't have to finance. I think if I could take that same $500,000 and teach someone how to properly market, draw people into their practice, your cost benefit is much, much better. $500,000 in marketing will get you that same practice. It's going to take you maybe a few years, 3, 4, 5 years, as opposed to having an instant practice, but that you have, in my mind, per dollar, overpaid.
I completely agree. And one of the things that I find fascinating, as an observer of your business is you are a great marketer. You actually think about marketing in the terms of how people should market a business. Is there a couple of techniques that you use? I certainly can think of a few, but is there some techniques that you use that you found really effective for attracting new clients, and especially the clients you want to attract? You can get anybody, but the clients you want to attract. What are those techniques? And maybe only a couple.
So you got to figure out what your marketing niche is. For me, it's paper. If it's not paper based, I'm not interested. And I know the whole world is online. My mother is online, so that's how I know the whole world is online.
The whole world is there, yeah.
That's it. And so a big philosophy of mine is contrarian view. If everybody is doing something, then that means I have to pivot 180 and do the opposite. And so this is the medium now. I do not communicate with clients or prospects in this format. I use telephone only. Okay. And the way I reach out is, well, here's an example for you. There's this thing called a newspaper. You have to like pay. Yeah. Well, it's made of trees, and but you can recycle it. And so I run full page newspaper ads with what I call direct response. So this little face here may be familiar to you. My ego is quite fine, but I plaster this everywhere. I want it to be a familiarity piece. I wrote a book. Doesn't matter what the book's about.
And you notice,
nobody reads it.
By the way, same look, same feel. Yep.
Same shirt.
Always same shirt. Always the same. I'd like to point that out because that's branding.
Paper newsletter. You'll recognize the gal on there again. And although her ego's just fine, she shows up in a number of places in it. So it's all paper-based. And the reason being, Chris, how many personalized communications did you get in today's mail?
I got 0.
How many emails did you get today?
About 3,000. I'm going to guess. I'm just probably exaggerating there, but yeah, you're right. I very
more than
rarely
0
get anything in paper, but I get everything electronically.
Correct. So I want to just go 180 degrees. I want to be the only thing in somebody's mailbox that's written directly for them, with my mug all over it, with what I call direct response, that I'm able to count. I like to count, meaning if I send 1,000 of these out, or 10 of them, how many inbound communications can I get? So I don't do any outbound that involves me. All my outbound is systematized. And I got that from you, Chris, that I added to. You told me either delegate, outsource, or systematize. So delegate, so something like this, of course, I don't mail that out. I don't put it together. Our marketing team does that for me. So I delegate the responsibility to my team, of which I only have 2 part-time assistants. Very efficient.
Right, which is amazing for the size of the business that you run, but that's part of the part of that niche. Yeah.
Outsource is hiring other people, so they're not on my team directly, and then systematize. If something happens in my practice more than once, we need to come up with a system in order to make that happen. So DOS, got those all from Chris. And then I added a U, like the letter U, and I say that's to unsubscribe. So, if you get an email, then you can press unsubscribe and hopefully you'll stop getting those emails. But I unsubscribe from a lot of things in life. There's things I just don't want in my way, in my face, in my brain, in my energy. So I unsubscribe. Chris, you will know, but I may be the last person on the face of the earth without a cell phone. And because I know I'd get nothing done.
I was hoping that you were going to tell our listeners that. And yes, I've known Thie a long time. And during that time, she has never owned a cell phone. And yet, as successful as she is, doesn't require a cell phone because anyone can be called back.
So I don't return phone calls anyway. So you can't call me. So
so it's much easier that way.
Yeah. So I don't take inbound phone calls. I only do outbound at scheduled times. So if you run that kind of a practice, you end up setting a lot of ground rules for the people you're attracting. And if you can get them to all follow the rules, boy, oh boy, what's a requirement? Right. Boy, oh boy, it makes your time and energy very, very efficient.
Absolutely. And so for the audience, you can share what are the percentage growth rates that you've seen on your business? Now, as I said, I know what they are, but they've been pretty amazing for all that you've just heard. No cell phone, using paper, attracting a niche audience, and saying that you have to fit into my box. In spite of all those things, because people think you have to market to everyone, you have to do everything. In spite of all those things, maybe talk a little bit about some of the successes and specifically how you've seen your business grow in the last 5 years.
Yeah, so you may actually have that data more than I, but here was the plan. So I count time and money. Okay, so time, the time you have to work in this business is determined by the number of clients you have. Right, the more clients, the more time it takes. It's just that's simple mathematics. The other side is the money side. How much money do you want to earn is determined by the assets you have within your practice. And I run a trailer-only practice, so much of my revenue is determined by the trailers I receive. So if you're counting time, money, that really means assets under management and the number of clients you have. Okay.
Right.
So what I have done, I don't really want to have more clients. I just want to have more money.
Right. Exactly.
So everybody perhaps talks that. That's nothing new, but they don't have a strategy to do so. So I'm always adding to the top and removing off the bottom. So the growth is not so much in the number of clients, because that's going to take more time.
Right.
The growth is in the assets under management.
And so that has been, I can do from where I sit, seeing exponential over the last 5 years. If it hasn't doubled, it's probably tripled.
Well, yeah. And how interestingly, I have fewer and fewer clients and the assets keep going up and up, right? Market movements notwithstanding, right?
Sure. They never hurt, but yeah, it's also doing the right things for the clients.
Oh, of course. I mean, that's you have to do the right thing for the client, but the clients are doing the right thing for me. Now, what I mean by that is I have a philosophy on wealth accumulation. And if somebody doesn't like my ideas on wealth accumulation, that's A-okay. But then they don't get into my practice. Okay. Right. So you'll know I have one holding in my client portfolios. Mm-hmm. Now that tilts a little wee bit with fixed income. Okay, so it just tilts, but all my clients have the exact same equity holdings, and they have the same. If they have fixed income, they have the same fixed income holdings, but they just have more or less of them.
Right, percentages.
Correct. Effectively, one holding. Now, my dear friends over at compliance will tell me you can't do that for everybody. That is, in fact, a true statement, but if somebody doesn't fit that profile, they don't get in my practice. Simple, clean, neat. Yeah. And if you attract them anyway, there are ways you can monetize by handing off that business.
Yeah. So, people who don't fit into your criteria, that doesn't mean they don't need advice. They just need it from someone else.
Correct.
And that's good for everybody. And somebody's pretty happy about that situation as well.
All of my marketing is paid for by the people who don't work with me.
Right. See, outsourcing.
Bingo.
One of the key things. So as we wind up, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever received that you would pass on to somebody else?
Charge fees for plans. Okay. And there's a number of reasons for it. First of all, it's cash at the very beginning of the relationship. Number two, clients are agreeing that you ought to get paid for the work that you do. Mm-hmm. I never, ever have a fee discussion after the fact on what I'm charging, which I understand amongst my colleagues is a premium, because they've already paid a fee at the front end. So if they're hesitant to do so, first of all, they can't get in the practice. Okay, that's fine. Although I can still monetize them with somebody else. Right? Sure, yeah. I don't want to pay a fee. Bravo. Let me introduce you to a pal. Okay. So if they pay a fee at the beginning, fees are never going to be an issue, ever.
Right. That's not a discussion point. Right. And it goes back to the type of client you want to attract. And you don't want to have that discussion because it's a difficult discussion and it really harms the relationship.
Well, some people are quite content to pay. In fact, some people will even say to me, I'd like to pay you to do a plan, but I don't want to be your client. No. I just thought the price just needs to be high enough so my ROI on my time is going to be right. Okay. And it's actually okay because then there's no ongoing work either. Right.
Right.
Remember, clients take time. Well, if you don't have a client, you just have the money.
That's okay too.
I'm okay with that. Yeah. Interestingly, some of those clients have come around later and asked if they could join the practice. And if enough time has passed, then I give them a discount on the next fee for the plan.
That is interesting. So I guess what they've been attracted to is, what your planning is, your planning prowess, your philosophy, all of those things. And then they go look around for somewhere else. If they don't find it, they're going to come back. And that's one of the, those keys. So see, during one of these things, I always do a rant. And one of my rants is, define your worth and define your practice. And don't try to always fit your practice around your client. Get clients to fit themselves around what they want. And that's the best way to do it. Because if you try to do everything for everybody, you'll end up making no one happy. But if you try to really focus your attention on the people that you can make super happy, and I know your clients are super happy, that's a much better way of life. It's a much better business. It's a much more profitable business. It's much more simplified than trying to open it up to be everything to everybody. And there's countless books that back up that statement that says you can be everything to everybody. And one of the ones I just finished, and I'm always big on books, is Inside Steve's Brain, about Steve Jobs. And we've had this discussion before. When Steve Jobs took over Apple, after he was fired and he had to come back, there was over 84 different product lines that he brought down to 4 in 3 years. And by being really, really, really good at those 4, Apple exploded, made the most amount of profit. The rest is history, so we say. So that's my rant on what you've just said.
Well, I'll jump on your rant. Yeah. There's a story too of Bill Gates Sr. and his wife, whom I've forgotten her first name. They had hosted a dinner and invited Warren Buffett. They said, this young kid of ours, Bill, as we know, might get a kick out of Buffett. And so as a teenager, Bill Gates had been introduced to Warren Buffett. And years later, after the fact, they were both on a stage and someone had asked, what is the key to your success? Now, they had asked it to both of them, and they both instantly answered at the same time and said, focus. Now, Mr. Gates, Jr., as well as Mr. Buffett, Senior, are a little bit smarter than I am. So if they said to focus both spontaneously, then the least I could do is figure out how to focus my practice and maybe even have a successful life by doing the same thing.
I love it. So I'm going to leave everybody with one actionable item out of this podcast. And that actionable item is, where will you focus? In other words, who is your perfect client that you can do the most good for, who truly appreciates the value of the services and advice that you bring, and how can you create a non-traditional way to market to them? And so that is my challenge to everybody listening to this podcast today, is try to define your perfect client and where you can create the most value. Any final words, Thie?
I'll say focus then, just like they did. Yeah, figure out how can you have a laser beam focus on the person that you. This is Dan Sullivan says, who do you want to be a hero to? Right. How can you have a laser beam focus on that individual to get them to inbound to you, to have an initial conversation to see if you can be of benefit to them and their family. If you spend all your time thinking about that, then the rest of it, implementation and picking portfolios and everything else, is a moot point.
Perfect. Thank you, Thie. Thank you for joining us in one of our initial episodes here. You've, as always, been outstanding. And I hope everyone's out there building a better business. And here we are turning the page. Thank you. So if you've liked what you've heard today, do us a favor and hit subscribe. That way you'll find another episode and another actionable takeaway on how to keep building a better business.